The credit alert hit my phone at 11:58 p.m., and the timing mattered more than the charge itself. I was sitting on the edge of the bed, tying my shoes, getting ready to pick my wife up from the airport. She'd been gone 3 days on what she called a mandatory leadership retreat. No signal in the mountains, she said. Spotty service, long sessions, team bonding. I hadn't questioned it. I never did. Then my phone buzzed. Unusual charge detected. I almost ignored it. Those alerts were usually nothing. A subscription renewing, a gas station hold, something boring. But the amount caught my eye, 487.22, and the merchant name underneath it made my chest go still. Harbor View Restaurant and Lounge. I knew that place. Everyone in the city did. It wasn't near the airport. It wasn't near the mountains. It was attached to a luxury hotel downtown, the kind of place people went when they wanted privacy disguised as ambiance. I stared at the screen longer than necessary, then tapped the alert. Approved transaction. 2 hours ago. 2 hours ago, my wife was supposed to be boarding a flight home. My name is Thomas Reed. I'm 44 years old, married to Julia for 15 years. 2 kids, both teenagers. A house that's paid down enough to feel safe. A job in corporate compliance that trained me to read patterns without emotion. That training kicked in immediately. I didn't call her. I didn't text. I finished tying my shoes, picked up my keys, and walked out to the car like nothing had changed. The drive to the airport felt surreal. Traffic lights, billboards, late-night radio hosts laughing about things that suddenly felt irrelevant. I parked, went inside, and stood near the arrival gate, watching people stream past me with luggage and tired faces. Julia wasn't among them. I checked the flight status. Landed on time, no delays. I waited another 20 minutes, still nothing. At 12:41 a.m., she finally texted, "Just landed. Baggage is slow, be out soon." I stared at the message, then looked back down at the credit alert. Harbor View Restaurant and Lounge. 2 hours ago. Baggage doesn't take 2 hours. I waited in my car when she finally appeared, pulling her suitcase behind her. Hair perfect, makeup still intact in a way that didn't match mountain retreats or long flights. She smiled when she saw me, leaned in through the open window and kissed my cheek. "Sorry," she said lightly. "Everything ran late." "No problem," I replied. My voice sounded normal. That surprised me. On the drive home, she talked about meetings, about team exercises, about how exhausting it all was. She never mentioned a restaurant, never mentioned downtown, never hesitated. I listened. At home, she went straight to the shower. I stood in the kitchen holding my phone, replaying the alert like it might change if I looked at it long enough. When she came out, wrapped in a towel, she smiled at me like she always did. "Missed you," she said. "I know," I replied. That night, she fell asleep instantly. I didn't. I lay there staring at the ceiling, replaying every trip she'd taken in the last year. Every late meeting, every dinner she said was for work. Every time I'd assumed trust meant not checking. The next morning, I did check. I logged into our shared credit account at work during lunch. The Harbor View charge wasn't the only one. There were others. Different dates, same hotel complex, same restaurant. Always late evenings, always on days she was supposedly out of town or working late. This wasn't a mistake. It was a habit. I didn't confront her. Confrontation would have turned this into a story she could manage. Instead, I opened a spreadsheet and started documenting. Dates, amounts, locations, excuses she'd used. By the end of the week, a pattern emerged so clearly it felt insulting. She wasn't even trying to hide anymore. The man appeared soon after, not in person, in language. She started mentioning a Daniel casually, a consultant, a fixer, someone who helps streamline projects. Daniel said this would take weeks. Daniel thinks we can push the deadline. She spoke his name like it belonged in our house. I searched him. Daniel Pierce, married, 1 child, works in private equity consulting. His social media painted the same picture Julia presented to the world. Stability, success, family. Julia had liked several of his posts. That detail lodged deep. They weren't sneaking, they were coordinating. The moment I knew how this would end came one evening when Julia sat across from me at dinner and said something she didn't need to say. "Daniel's wife is very intense," she said casually. "I don't think she trusts anyone." I looked up. "How do you know her?" She froze for half a second, just long enough. I've met her once, she said quickly. Work event. I nodded and went back to eating. That night I emailed Daniel's wife. I didn't accuse, I informed, I attached receipts, and I waited. Because people who believe they're untouchable rarely prepare for the moment they're finally seen. The reply came at 6:11 a.m. I was already awake, sitting at the kitchen table with a mug of coffee I hadn't touched, watching the house breathe in the quiet way it does before everyone else wakes up. The message notification lit my screen, and I knew before opening it that whatever was inside would change more than just my marriage. I suspected something, Daniel's wife wrote, but I didn't have proof. Thank you for telling me. There was no anger in her words, no panic, just the kind of restraint that comes from someone who has been holding themselves together for a long time. I sent her everything, not dramatically, not all at once. Receipts, dates, times, the pattern laid out cleanly, like a ledger. I didn't editorialize, I didn't speculate. I let the facts speak the way they always do in their given room. Julia came downstairs 20 minutes later, hair still damp, phone in her hand, already scrolling. You're up early, she said. Couldn't sleep, I replied. She nodded absently and poured coffee, humming under her breath. She looked relaxed, grounded, like someone whose life was exactly where she wanted it to be. That was the last calm moment she would have for a very long time. At 8:43 a.m., her phone rang. She glanced at the screen and frowned. That's weird, she said. It's Daniel. She answered, turning slightly away from me. What's wrong? She asked. I watched her posture change as he spoke. The confidence drained first, then the color from her face. Her free hand tightened around the counter. No, she said. That's not who told her. She went quiet, listening, eyes darting toward me for the first time that morning. I have to go, she said finally and hung up. She stood there for a moment, phone pressed to her palm like it might burn her. Thomas, she said slowly, did you say something to anyone? Yes, I replied, her eyes widened. You told someone? I told the person who didn't know, I said, the same way someone eventually told me. Her mouth opened, then closed. You went behind my back. You went everywhere but in front of me, I said. She started pacing then, fast, uneven steps across the kitchen tile. This wasn't supposed to come out like this, she said. This was private. You used shared money, I replied. Shared time, shared trust. That made it public. Her phone buzzed again. This time she didn't answer it. Another notification followed, then another. Her shoulders slumped. They pulled Daniel into a meeting, she said quietly. His firm. Compliance. I nodded. That happens. You did this, she whispered. No, I said. I stopped preventing it. The rest of the day unfolded without shouting. That surprised her. She expected anger, accusations, tears, something she could react to, manage, reframe. Instead, she got calm, and calm doesn't give you anywhere to stand. By evening, Daniel's wife had packed a bag and taken their child to her sister's house. Daniel stopped answering Julia's calls altogether, not out of loyalty, but out of self-preservation. Men like him always disappeared when the consequences arrived. Julia sat on the couch, staring at her phone long after dinner had gone cold. I never meant for this to happen, she said finally. That's not true, I replied. You just never meant for it to reach me. She looked at me then, really looked like she was seeing a stranger. You're not even mad, she said. I was, I answered, before I understood who you were being. Her eyes filled, but the tears didn't fall. What are you going to do? She asked. I stood and went to the study. When I came back, I placed a folder on the coffee table. Inside were printouts, statements, timelines, and divorce papers. I'm not reacting, I said. I'm concluding. She flipped through them mechanically, as if her hands didn't quite believe what they were touching. You planned this, she said. I prepared, I replied, because you taught me I needed to. The days that followed were efficient and devastating. Daniel was quietly let go. His firm didn't want attention. Julia was placed on administrative leave pending review. She tried to frame it as temporary, but the calls stopped coming. Meetings were canceled. Her name slowly detached itself from things it used to open doors to. The kids noticed the change before she did. She moved into the guest room, then into an apartment closer to downtown. Not because I forced her, but because staying felt like an accusation she couldn't escape. The divorce didn't drag on. There was nothing to argue about once the illusion was gone. The house stayed with me. The finances were divided cleanly. No dramatics, no courtroom speeches. On the day it was finalized, Julia asked one last question. Was there anything I could have said to make you stay? I thought about it. No, I replied, because staying would have meant pretending again. She nodded once, the kind of nod people give when they finally understand something they can't change. Months passed. The house settled into a different rhythm, quieter but not lonely. Honest. The kids adjusted faster than either of us expected. Routine returned, stripped of its performances. One evening, as I filed away old statements, I came across the original credit alert screenshot, Harbor View Restaurant and Lounge. I deleted it without ceremony. Some lessons don't need souvenirs. I ran into Julia once more, by accident, at a hardware store. She looked tired, not broken, just smaller, like someone who had mistaken confidence for immunity. You look steady, she said. I am, I replied. She hesitated. I didn't think you'd ever check. I met her eyes. I always knew how, I said. I just didn't think I needed to. I paid for my things and walked out into the late afternoon light, the kind that makes everything look peaceful even when something important has ended. The difference now was that the peace was real, and it didn't cost anyone else their honesty to maintain it.